Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast. One of the host's favorite player left in the NBA playoffs is Johnny Furphy. Ben, did you know that the Pacers had a player named Johnny Furphy?
Yeah, we have a group chat, all the baby faces, and so he and I, we've been chatting for years. Yeah, just dealing with all the jokes. I'm aware of him, yes.
Johnny Furphy sounds like a made-up dog pun of a name and not a real name.
Yeah.
Speaking of baby faces, Ben got the little TikTok hair going on. New look I see for the.
I've got the haven't had a haircut since the NFL draft, which was the last time I had to be on screen. Good luck going right now.
Last time, wow. Okay, yeah. So you are back today for a very important reason. This is one of my favorite pods of the year. We do it every year. It is the top 10 offenses pod, where we try to pick the top 10 offenses of 2025. I say this every year, and even though we got a ton wrong, but last year, like I had the Niners at the top. Who knew the entire team would get injured? I didn't have them at the very top, but I had them very high. Mm-hmm. Offenses, though, are a lot more consistent year to year. And that, before we get to our rankings, I'm going to talk about last year and all of that. I think you and I were texting a little bit offline about like, are you having trouble picking your teams? It's always like a little fuzzy at the end when you're deciding who's last man in, last man out. But compared to defenses, in which there's a lot of turnover, a lot of chaos, it's usually a pretty similar, not obviously every year, but there's a lot of consistency year to year with top offenses.
Yeah. Top 10 offenses is an exercise in exclusion, not inclusion.
Yeah.
It's very easy to figure out who could belong, right? There's way more than 10. I didn't think for a second about putting the Dolphins on my list, but you go and you look at the Dolphins, like, when Tua's healthy, they're the top offense by EPA per drop back. There's so many ways to make offense work in the NFL. So you have to winnow, you have to cut, you have to find reasons to get rid of teams, as opposed to when you do top 10 defenses, like, all right, all these teams might have a weakness here, a weakness there. And that's an exercise in inclusion. This is an exercise in exclusion.
That's exactly was my experience to making this, where I felt like pretty clear top 8, top 7. Then you're starting to debate a little bit. And then I think you could really make a case for like 15, maybe even 16 teams, the top half, if things shake right for them. So at the end, we'll talk about like the teams that just missed for both of us. And I can't imagine we have identical lists. So we might have some that are on yours, some that are on mine that aren't. There's no crossover. There's probably gonna be a lot of crossover there, and especially at the top or near the top. By the way, I've been listening to other top 10 pods, top rankings pods. I think I might be the only one that goes 1 to 10 instead of counting.
Yes, which is better.
Because there's more variability at the end than at the beginning.
Right. And inevitably you end up talking a lot about 11, 12, and 13, which is weird when you start at 10 and go the other direction.
And then when you start at 10 and you go the other direction, it's like, well, I'll get to them. We'll get to them later. And then you just end up talking about them, whatever. Anyways, okay. Strongly agree that 1 through 10 is the best way to do top 10 pods. Let's just jump right in here. So, before actually we jump in, I'm going to read you last year's top 10 offenses by DVOA. Ravens, Bills, Lions, Packers, Bengals, Commanders, Bucks, Chiefs, Niners, Rams. Just outside the top 10, Cardinals, Chargers. That one actually kind of took me by surprise. Eagles. Quick impressions of what, because there's a lot of other metrics I'm sure we're going to get into when we talk about these teams last year. I'm just using DVA to remind folks that's FTN Fantasy's metric that accounts for opponent and is looking at basically how efficient an offense is, how explosive they are, everything. It's all in based on a number of factors, but opponent matters a lot, which I think is why I like to use it first. What do you think?
The DVOA, the thing that surprised me the most was the Niners making it at 9. Yeah. Niners were, without question, hardest team for me to deal with in terms of where I wanted to end up with them, because there's so many reasons to just have blind faith in the 49ers. And then there's a lot of reasons for deep uncertainty with this year's version of the 49ers. And so them actually like being quite good opponent adjusted, I think that would have made Niners fans feel better in week 17, week 18 last year. But looking back on it now with kind of clear eyes, they're like, man, they actually did a lot of good work relative to the hand they were dealt.
Yeah, the Niners were outside the top 10 in both EPA per play and success rate, which are and I think that captures. That's why it's surprising. It's like, okay, wait, if you account for opponent, and they were, of course, the most injured team. The other thing I would say is I feel like coming off the Super Bowl, it might surprise people that the Eagles were not a top 10 offense last year by basically any metric, including DVOA, which I think is interesting. The Chiefs also finishing 8th might surprise people because I think, again, we remember these teams based on the last time we saw them, and the last time we saw them, the Eagles looked like world beaters, and the
Right.
Chiefs looked completely incompetent. But was not the case during the regular season. All right, enough said. Let's find out if we have the same number one overall pick. Da-da-da-da. The Ravens.
Yeah, Baltimore Ravens. It's got to be.
All right. So the Ravens. This is a good time to revisit last year. Oh my God. They were an absolute wagon. First in DVOA, as I mentioned, first in EPA per play, second in success rate. So EPA per play is accounting for explosives and whatnot. Success rate is more like, are you moving the ball efficiently? Are you getting, 40% on first down, 60% on second down, et cetera, et cetera. So they're good to look at together. They were good at both. They were first in explosive plays, first in yards per play, first in red zone rate. They were first versus man coverage, first versus zone coverage. Any way you slice it, this was the best offense in football. Ben, they are largely returning the same cast outside of the interior of the offensive line. Is there, did you have any doubts before putting the Ravens as the number one offense?
I did for a little bit, just because offensive line wise, even let's say they were returning Patrick McCarry, who left in free agency for the Jaguars, I would still sit here and go, like, Daniel Falele at right guard. He's not, a great starter. He's got some weaknesses to him. McCarry himself was not lights out at guard. And now it's Andrew Voorhees, who initially had that left guard job, ended up getting hurt, losing it to McCarry, never really got back to it. So I would have said, offensive line relative to my number 2 team, all right, it's a little bit of a doubt, but the offensive line played well last year, and when it didn't play well, Lamar was just such a preposterous pressure eraser, right? Both in terms of extending the play for a quarter of a second just to get that throw off, or doing the Lamar thing, having the time to throw 3.5 seconds, and just scrambling and creating and so on and so forth. Some more statistical content since 2010. This offensive season for the Ravens was the 14th best by EPA per play, the 6th best by EPA per dropbacks of the last 15 seasons. This wasn't just oh, Ravens are the best offense. Ravens were a historically good drop back offense with Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, and Isaiah Likely as the primary pass catchers. Not guys who are going to get their names written in the Hall of Fame when the careers end. It was an unbelievable season for Lamar Jackson. It was an unbelievable season for Todd Monken. And I think a big part of that passing down success is obviously what you get from Derrick Henry as well. The only other reason for concern is that this was the healthiest offense last year. I brought up the Voorhees injury. They replaced him with McCarry, and they keep it chugging. Adjusted games lost has them at 7.7 on the offensive side of the ball. It's the least for any team in football. And so you're worried about some injury health regression, but injuries is going to be a thing we worry about for every single team on this list. So it's no reason not to put the Ravens first.
The way defenses have to make impossible decisions against this group as a whole is really captured in the data, right? The amount of times they face single high coverage, stacked boxes, which, by the way, a lot of the top 5 offenses are doing the same thing in the NFL right now, and forcing defenses to make those awful choices, is going to be consistent because Lamar Jackson is still there. Derrick Henry is still there. I think this is a really good offensive line. I really like these pass catchers and how they blend together, especially in, again, this offense, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's that math that they make you do that is just going to stay the same. And then on top of the math, because there are other offenses that force you to stack the box, force you to, play single high, but they don't have a quarterback who is capable of just punishing you every time, not only intermittently, but consistently. And that's sort of where we got with Lamar Jackson, where he is deadly accurate now, and he does not throw interceptions, and he does not take sacks. You mentioned something that I do want to hit on a little bit, which is Todd Monken. So that's another big part of why I have them as the number one offense. Todd Monken was incredible last year.
Rips.
And I know he's given, the best ingredients a chef could possibly work with and all of that. But there's a lot. When I was looking at some of the numbers, I started noticing things that Monken did last season that I think are also a big part of why, this came up a lot during the Lamar MVP debate. He has the most wide open targets. Some of that is his gravity. Some of it is the pass catchers. Some of it is them respecting the run. But a lot of it is Todd Monken too. And one of the things he did last year that I wanted to run by you or talk about with you. So something that kind of drove me crazy with the Ravens offense was they were not totally siloed, but if they were 11 personnel, which they've done more in recent years since early in Lamar's career, they were throwing the football. They almost never ran. And last year that came down really significantly, where they were actually running the football with Derrick Henry now in the backfield and the gun and more comfort there. And I think he once again mixed up the variance in the personnel groupings. Like, the offense is evolving, is what I'm saying. It is
Mhm.
not what it was 1 year ago. It is not what it was 2 years ago. And I feel like I suddenly have like a strong degree of confidence in this guy, Todd Monken, their offensive coordinator, playing, at a level commensurate with what he has to work with.
Yeah, you brought up having like the right ingredients to cook with. I think a lot of lesser offensive coordinators would struggle to juggle just how many guys there are on this team you want
Mm,
to use and the specific ways in which you want to use them. You have a running back in Derrick Henry who is unique in the league, extremely challenging to deal with, but you got to run him a certain way. It's about getting the steam
yeah,
train rolling downhill. It's about giving him that runway in the first level. You have a running back too in Justice Hill, who's a good pass blocker, a good pass catcher. How are we going to get him some of those designed quick screens, those 3rd and 15 big catch and runs, whatever? We have a tight end room. You got to fold Patrick Ricard in there a little bit. Obviously, a very unique player with a Mark Andrews, with an Isaiah Likely, 2 tight ends who are both good pass catchers. But again, you want to use them differently. Mark Andrews is the guy you want on the verticals, on the seams, and on the drags and on the crossers. Likely you want running a little bit more breaking routes. Neither one you want blocking too much. Okay, Zay Flowers, great with the ball in his hands, great with single coverage on the outside. Not necessarily the player you want operating over the middle of the field. Rashad Bateman, more of that bigger target who can take some of those throws between the numbers and between the hashes. Like, this is a lot of stuff going. These aren't plug and chug players here. It's like, all right, let's run our system. We know how this works. Monken's ability, like, if you watch if you watch the Ravens offense, then you watch his other good offenses. The Ravens will they'll run concepts a little bit deeper because they know that Lamar can extend the play for a little
yeah,
bit longer. They'll run traps and whams out of pistol the way that other teams don't, because they want Derrick Henry to be going vertically. They don't want him to be on those zone tracks. Like, it's just little stuff where I understand exactly who I have at my players, and I'm not going to do nonsense that doesn't maximize them. But there's no fat. It's a very trim offense, despite the fact that there are so many mouths to feed. That's a hard needle to thread, man. It really is.
and it all goes because of 8.
Yeah.
Um,
Because when
I
you're wrong, he just,
yeah,
don't worry about it. I'll solve this for you.
I interviewed Darius Slay, former
Mhm.
Eagle Super Bowl champion,
Go Birds.
and I asked him, that'll be on YouTube, youtube.com/@Mina, and I asked him, "You're in the AFC North now. Which offense is more challenging to defend, the Bengals or the Ravens?" I actually thought he was going to say the Bengals because of the receivers, and he's a corner. But he was like, "It's Baltimore because you have to defend 2 plays in 1, and it's just
Yeah.
it's a
And
nightmare."
and
It's
with Greg Roman, they used to be bad on the chalkboard, good in the playground. And with Todd Monken, they are good on the chalkboard and they're
it's
good in
been
the
yeah.
playground. It's a headache and a half.
Okay. Who do you have as number 2? Do we have the same team?
I have the Bills here.
Yeah, the Bills.
Yeah,
Okay.
and right, it's your 2 MVP front runners, your 2 top teams. The top 2 to me felt pretty secure. I think 3 is where I first started to have debates
I have a
last
curveball
season.
at 3, I think. I
Yeah,
think it's a curveball, so
I also feel like my 3 is like a little bit of an island, so we'll see.
okay.
Bills last season, second in EPA per play, second in points per drive, second in down set conversion rate, which for those who don't know, what percentage of your first downs are you turning into a new first down or a touchdown, right? Are you getting yourself new opportunities to go score? So second, all that, 10th in success rate, because they're a little bit reliant on the explosive play. That's a little bit
Yeah.
how that passing game has gone. We know that still 5% of Josh Allen is the old Josh Allen, right? Where there's some high variance there. But the Bills' offensive growth over the last couple of years, really the Joe Brady era, the thing that you keep coming back to is Aaron Cromer and this offensive line, their ability to just hand off the football. And they couldn't do this. It's so easy to forget in the Brian Dable era because Dable was a hot coaching name and Allen was establishing himself. But this team had a problem, which is that they wanted to be 4 wide all the time. And they couldn't just run the daggone ball when they got light boxes and when they needed to control game script. And now they have a 5 across offensive line who is not just like good talent across the board. Deion Dawkins, David Edwards, Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, and Spencer Brown. But last year they played 800 snaps together. It was the second most continuous offensive line in the league. They're all back this year. And presumably James Cook back. Like, you're going to be able to just keep on chugging with this running game. They do the 6th offensive line stuff. That ability to stay ahead of the sticks and to not expose that at times high variance passing game to too many 3rd and longs and to too many dropbacks is a really important new facet of this Bills offense. We talked a lot last season about how it was all about the revival of the running game. And you heard about the Eagles and the Ravens and the Packers because those are the teams that added the new running back. But I'm telling you, the Bills were right there on that forefront in terms of we want to be good in the under center, hand the ball off, no RPO nonsense. We're just going to give it and we're going to get downhill. That's a big part of this offense. So to me, you expect them to be up league leaders once again.
Fourth in rush DVOA,
Mhm.
top 4 in a lot of advanced metrics when you're looking at the run game. I feel like the run game was like slept on for much of the season, to be honest. But again, this cuts to where you're talking about the Ravens. If you have a dual threat quarterback who is special in other ways, talk about in a second, and then a dominant run game and a good offensive line, it's just the math. It's just a nightmare. Same thing with the Bills. They fall below Baltimore for me because I do like the Baltimore pass catchers a bit more. I'll
Mhm.
talk about that in a second. But the continuity here is tremendous across the board. And keeping Joe Brady, who I feel like if things continue going the way they're going, might be lost. I talked about him. We did a top 10 future head coaches draft, and he was my first pick overall. I just feel like he's gonna be gone next year. He's gonna be a head coach. That in that moment, in that draft, I talked about last week with Mike Gold Jr. I talked about the run game and how much they've leaned into it, and how I was dead wrong. I was like, it's fine with Ken Dorsey, and how
Mhm.
they've evolved in the way that I think offense needs to evolve now. But like he also, I feel like, did a lot. The pass game was very Chiefsy.
Mhm.
It's a very Chiefsy last few years passing game where it's not. They're good players. They're not great players. Sorry. And I thought he was really spectacular at finding ways to get the most out of the receivers he had and tight ends he had, and also finding ways to get them open. One thing that I looked at because I was thinking, like, God, I feel like they were so good at using motion in the passing game and bunches, and that was statistically borne out. They were first league wide in EPA per play when they used any sort of pre snap motion in the passing game,
Mhm.
or actually any, not just passing game, the offense. When it was motion at the snap, they were tied with the Ravens. But I just think, like, we're going to talk about some teams with coming up who have really, really good pass catchers. They're very similar to the Ravens in that it's like, okay, they're pretty good, but pretty good is enough because of the math, the quarterback, and the play caller. And I wasn't that upset that they didn't really add at the pass catching group. I mean, there was a lot of, I know Brandon Bean had his little like, wow, where
Yeah,
people
yeah,
are
yeah.
freaking out about our offense. Like, yeah, I would have loved to add some speed. I really would. But like, Ben, this offense was amazing last year. I didn't really feel like it was a huge need in the way that it made sense to me that they focused on defense.
Yeah. The only way I can get myself worried about the receiver room, if I'm like trying to, is okay. You made the Chiefs comparison. This passing game has become very Chiefsy. I agree. The thing that I think differentiates Allen and Mahomes in this style of an offense is that Allen will a bit more bang his head against I'm going to throw the ball downfield than Mahomes will.
Yeah.
Mahomes has so at first wonderfully and now a little bit too far accepted the reality of like being a check down player and keeping the offense on schedule, throwing the ball underneath. Allen will still be like, he's still got the green goblin mask in his head. It's like, chuck it, dude, chuck it, chuck it, chuck it down the field. And last year they brought in Mac Hollins, and Mac was like weirdly good for them on some of those downfield targets. They draft Keon Coleman. Coleman had some good successes, like the 101, jump ball guy. But if Josh is still going to have that voice in the back of his head telling him to go, I would like to feel better about the addition specifically down the field. If they go and get Josh Palmer, who the thing I would say about Josh Palmer is he's perfectly cromulent at a lot of stuff. He's a little bit frustrating down the field.
He's
Khalil
just
Shakir, who I think
he's a
is excellent. I think is so good. It's
yeah.
just his quickness and his yards after the catch and he's tough to see breaking tackles. He's just not the down the field player. I wish I knew a little better who
Who
was going to be
yeah.
the recipient and the value player on some of those Allen shots.
And if that's not going to be a huge part of your offense because like it's just not really in the roster,
Mm-hmm.
I wish they had a little more personnel diversity. They're obviously, but they used a ton of jumbo with 6 offensive linemen, and that was cool and effective for them. But, when they drafted Dalton Kincaid, the thought was like, okay, great. Now we can put 2 tight ends in the field and we can do like what some of these other Ravens and the Lions do. And then they just don't do it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's, there's a litany of reasons for that. Health has been a factor with both tight ends being on the field at the same time, but also consistency. Kincaid has been like good, not great, is how I would put it for them. If he could take a leap forward and sort of be the first round draft pick and live up to the promise he showed in college as a guy who can really like stretch the seam and make difficult catches downfield up the middle, That to me is what takes this offense to another level.
So yeah, if you could pick between Kincaid taking that
But
leap or Keon Coleman taking that leap for this offense, you'd pick Kincaid, you think? Because to me, the player is Coleman.
well, Coleman would be more useful, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of more of a believer in Kincaid, if I'm being
Okay.
honest,
I'm
as
still
a
a Coleman guy.
you're
Yeah.
still a Coleman guy. I mean, look, like, we're nitpicking. This is the number 2 offense in the NFL. I am not concerned about them. I think they're going to be excellent. Again, health is the only thing that I would say worries me. All right, Ravens Bills boring. We both agreed.
Yes.
I went back and forth on my top 5. I juggled them a few times. I feel pretty good about the teams I have at 3, 4, 5. I moved this team to 3 to just I don't know if it was like to be spicy or whatnot, but I know I'm probably gonna regret this. I have the Chiefs here.
I have the Chiefs at 4.
Okay. This is okay. Interesting. Who do you have at 3?
Cincinnati Bengals.
You're the Bengals. I have the Bengals at 4.
Okay, so we're not as cool as we thought we were. We're not as
Right, we
spicy.
thought we were being all rebellious. Okay, well, let's talk about the Chiefs first, then we'll talk about the Bengals, and then
Yeah.
maybe why we. So I'm very uncomfortable giving my case for the Kansas City Chiefs because it is almost entirely predicated on Rasheed Rice.
Yep.
I don't know, y'all. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand what the heck's going on. Why? I mean, I do understand. I think, as I understand it, they are waiting to suspend him until the courts do something. But maybe somebody can explain to me the kind of protocol for that, because obviously Roger Goodell does have the ability to step in at times. And I'm saying all this. I don't know. Chiefs fans, you're probably yelling. Non-Chiefs fans, you're yelling. I am just going to talk about the football right now,
Mhm.
and why, if he's on the field, it's such a difference maker. And I say that I want to be clear. I understand anyone who thinks it's like kind of crazy that he is because of what happened. So Rasheed Rice, from the halfway point of prior season until he got injured this year, was 4th league wide in yards after the catch, 4th league wide, 4th league wide in yards per route run. The first 3 weeks in particular of this season, if he is anything like he was in that period before, again, he got hurt, not only is he like a truly, it's funny because we don't think of him as being like a traditional number 1 and whatever, but in this offense he is.
Yeah.
He also he's the missing piece for me last year. Like, he is really great against zone coverage. They need someone to step up in that role because Travis Kelce is obviously in the downturn of his career. Xavier Worthy last year emerged as the guy versus man. They started using Xavier Worthy on those like outbreaking routes a lot. Rasheed Rice is the in-breaking guy. So like they complement each other, I think, in a way where if you don't have him, the inconsistency you're going to get from Travis Kelce at this point is a real problem. So, despite the fact that he was injured for most of the season and we were just constantly panicking about the Chiefs offense, as we discussed, they were still top 10 in a lot of metrics. Patrick Mahomes was still exceptional with his legs. He was still exceptional on third down. The biggest question I have is they were still, by the way, they were top 7. They were 7th in success rate. So this was not it was not an explosive offense at all, but they were very good at just chugging along. I'm sure, yeah, they're first in time of possession per drive.
Yep.
The big question mark is the offensive line, and that gave me some pause. You are now betting on Jalen Moore at left tackle with Kingsley Suamataia moving into left guard. We'll see what happens with Josh Simmons, though, coming back from injury. But I just feel like last year was kind of like the nightmare year. And if they got through the nightmare year and still finished as a top 10 or better offense, it's hard for me to imagine them not taking a leap.
Yeah, I think things that you expect to be sticky are things like success rate, right? Are you creating positive plays? Yes or no? They were 5th in success rate on dropbacks. They were 9th in success rate on design runs. Things you expect to be volatile are explosive play rate, because that's the thing that you miss just by a shoestring of a tackle, just by a ball slightly outstretched beyond Xavier Worthy's hands. They were 28th in explosive pass rate, and then they were 29th, I want to say, 30th in explosive rush rate. And so, like, if you're just asking me, okay, what was the stronger signal from the Chiefs last year? That the lack of explosives is going to stay and continue to cripple the team, or the ability to inch the ball down the field predicts some improvement in explosive play rate when they start to be a little bit more aggressive, when they get a little bit more healthy? It's the second one. Like, that's just statistically more likely. Narratively, then, anecdotally, you go and you say, okay, they were 22nd adjusted games lost. They lost Rice for a large portion of the season. They didn't have Marquise Brown for a large portion of the season
Should have
because of
mentioned him
the,
too. Sorry,
the
yeah.
preseason injury. No, yeah. And they lost Isaiah Pacheco as well. When Pacheco came back, he was clearly not
Yeah.
back. And you end up with him and Kareem Hunt kind of being this very plodding style of a running game. It is intuitive to me that with a healthier year from Pacheco and with a return of Marquise Brown, with the return of Rashee Rice, that this team should be better at creating explosive plays, that their weapons should be a little bit scarier. Xavier Worthy in year two. A lot of the year one role for Xavier Worthy was figuring out what he can and can't do at the NFL level, and then kind of sliding him into replace some of the Rashee Rice design touches. He became their screen guy, right? Their motion guy, so on and so forth. When you reintroduce Rice, you draw the gravity of the defense. Now life becomes easier for Travis Kelce as the number 2, number 3 option, going against the number 2, number 3 option for the defense, not the number 1 guy anymore. You make Xavier Worthy's life a little bit easier. You can reintroduce some of the downfield stuff for him. Like, it's not mentally hard to get there, right? Like, it all makes sense for the Chiefs improving. You trust Patrick Mahomes, you trust Andy Reid. Yeah, they should be a top 5 offense next year.
The Bengals and the Chiefs have the same problem, which is they're both not good at running the football, right? But not good. The Chiefs' offense wasn't a dynamic run game, but they were an efficient one.
Yep.
Until about halfway through the season, and then of course in the Super Bowl it kind of all fell apart that they couldn't run them because they were just doing screens and the short passing game had basically supplanted, pardon me, the run game, and then that became an issue in the Super Bowl when they couldn't pass protect and they couldn't run the ball. The Bengals, I think, have the same problem, but the Chiefs, to me, I feel like the interior of the offensive line, the stability that they've chosen there with, keeping Trey Smith in-house. That's actually a good question for you. Who do you think's going to I feel like they're going to have a better run game personally than the Bengals. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, and I think that they did, right? Like I said, they had the good success rate numbers, the low explosive numbers. The Bengals, if you look after Zach Moss went down and Chase Brown became the starter last year, they were 13th in success rate, 15th in EPA per play on design run. So when they had Chase Brown, they kind of got to a good average enough of a rushing game to feel fine about it. But the Chiefs, their running game package with the quick screen game, the RPO game, the package plays, like, that's just, it's good enough. It's been good enough. They spent a couple of years there, 21 and 22, figuring out how to become a shotgun running team and really actually make that work. It's hard to do at the NFL level without, actually being an option team and making the quarterback pull the ball. And they've gotten there. They've figured that out. The running game will improve in part because, okay, Pacheco back and whatever, but the more dangerous the screen game is and the more legitimately you have to fear Rashee Rice catching the ball 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, that helps the running game as well from a box count perspective. And I think, again, Rice coming back to that, they obviously were successful with Worthy, but Rice coming back to that is going to be helpful. I'm worried about the left side of the line. I am. Like, there's no way not to be. I also have watched enough Patrick Mahomes, even when it was like Donovan Smith and Jawan Taylor at tackle, to be like, okay, like he kind of knows how to color in these lines here a little bit, such that I'm worried about it, but I can't get too far worried about it unless we talk about like Mahomes' ankle injury in week 3 that kind of subsists over the course of the season.
The Rice thing is so weird. I don't know. Did you feel the same way when you're looking at the Chiefs as I did, where it's like, yeah, I'm really optimistic about this based on the availability of this one wide receiver whose suspension is like vastly unclear. Like, it feels hard to project. So but am I putting too much stock in him as setting aside that as a player? Do you think I'm overrating his importance to the offense at all?
No, because he's the only big one. And that's the thing is that with Marquise Brown with Xavier Worthy, you want to say, well, throw Xavier Worthy a screen, throw Marquise Brown a quick pass. They're fast, they're quick. They don't break tackles, though. They can break some angles, they can outrun some guys, but they have to run into the sideline. They can't take on contact. And of the many magics of Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes over the years, because there's just 19 different things you can say about the chemistry and the adjusting of the routes and catching outside of the radius. One thing about Kelce is when he catches that little 8-yard button hook, he's got eyes out the back of his head, side of his head, out his butt. Like he has such a feel for where the safety's going to go, linebacker's going to go, and he had the ability to turn up field and break some tackles, make some guys miss. Rashee Rice, it's not just, you brought up the yards after the catch number, fourth highest, back half of last year, now into the injury. It's not
First.
just
Sorry, I was first.
first,
I
excuse me.
misspoke.
So it's
Yeah.
not just because he's an
Yeah.
explosive mover and ever. It's because he is big enough to take
What's
contact over the middle of the field. And so you reintroduce the 8 to 15 yard between the hashes area that they lost last year.
I chose that. I did second half of the season because that's when they really started activating him on crossers. And crossers are such an important part of this Chiefs offense, and it was missing consistently last year.
If you're going to do all that eye candy, all that yanking on linebackers, right? RPOs and
somebody's got to occupy that space. Yeah.
What you want to kill him with is right behind him. Yeah.
So why did you have? So I had the Bengals fourth. So again, we're nitpicking here. They're very close. Why did you have them above the Chiefs? Let's look at it through that lens.
One of the things I did for the exercise was just kind of go through and try to identify elite players, right? So, okay, who's got elite guys? And just, I look at Joe Burrow throwing to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and I go, man, it's too good. It's hacking. Yeah. It's deeply unfair, but it is. They're the only team I've got that has an elite quarterback throwing to an elite wide receiver, and then I have T as like near elite, very good. But to me, T is one of the 15 best receivers in football, and he's wide receiver 2 for this team. And you see how valuable he is in games like that Broncos game last year, where it's Pat Surtain against Jamar Chase. The Broncos defense is predicated on the idea that because we have a Patrick Surtain, we can make you play left-handed in a way that no other defense can. And the Bengals just kind of go LOL and throw the ball to T. Higgins a bunch. Like it's just not fair. Last year from week 9 on again, so Zach Moss gets hurt, Chase Brown becomes the starter, and this also includes most T. Higgins games because he missed a stretch there in the middle of the season. From week 9 on, the Bengals were first in success rate, 6th in EPA per play, 6th in points per drive, 3rd in downset conversion rate. They were without question one of the 5 best offenses in football. Brown, I think, is a very important. They've got a nice little piece here in Chase Brown, and one of the things that has been frustrating about the Bengals offenses in the past is it's been Joe T. Chase, and then after it's been a cliff. And I think the play of Andre Iosivas.
Boyd.
You're Boyd. But Andre Iosivas, Mike Gesicki having an actual guy at tight end, something they've been missing for a while. And then obviously they had the Joe Mixon years and the handoff ability. But Chase Brown, when he was the full-time starter, he was averaging 5 catches for 37 yards a game. They really got the running back target involved and the screen game involved in a way you hadn't seen previously with the Bengals. I thought that was a nice new wrinkle to this offense. It's one of the scariest passing attacks in football. The players are too good, and they've been playing together for too long. It's really, really hard to actually stop this passing game.
Gesicki is the interesting mention because you talked about kind of new wrinkles in the offense. There was a point before Eric Hall got hurt, who was the rookie tight end, where they were using a lot of 2 tight end sets for the first time, I believe, in Joe Burrow's career. And they were kind of good at it. I was looking at some of the numbers. 3rd league-wide in EPA per play using 12 personnel. And notably, they were decent at running the ball out of that because they're the Cincinnati Bengals. If you have 2 tight ends and those 2 receivers on the field, teams are still going to play you light. If Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are on the field, you are going to be played light, right? You're going to be played with, you face a lot of shell coverage. You're going to face a lot of lighter DBs. They actually had 0.09 EPA per play running the ball with 2 tight ends on the field, which is very good and very good for the Cincinnati Bengals. So they were kind of landing on something there where the offense became a little bit less siloed, a little bit less all we can do is throw the ball out all over the yard. And then he got hurt and they had to kind of go away from it. But that's something I'm interested in seeing this year. If they continue going down that path of you putting, because they're not going formationally, they're not going to change that much. But if they can use a little bit more tight ends, kind of mix it up a little bit, I think they can get something going in the run game that way.
Yeah, and they have Sample, and then they had Tanner Hudson, right? They have depth at tight end.
Sample is their blocking.
Is the blocking guy for them. And so I think they have enough pieces to do it, and to not, it's not like a total sellout. I think about the Vikings, where when the Vikings put Johnny Munt and Josh Oliver on the field, you're kind of okay, well, we know the score. And neither Sample nor Gesicki holds a candle to Josh Oliver as a blocker, but it's the versatility, it's the ability to actually get into pass from that I think is valuable. I initially had the Bengals quite lower because the guard situation highly concerns me, right? Where it's Cordell Volson, who had a restructured veteran contract this year, fighting out the left guard spot with Dylan Fairchild, who's a 3rd-round pick out of Georgia. Yeah. Right guard, you expect Lucas Patrick and Cody Ford fighting for that spot. That's pretty dire. And then I remember that the guard situation has been dire for the Bengals the last like 2.5 years, right? Like Volson, I think, has always been a
Yeah.
player that you've seen opposing defenses attack. Obviously, Alex Kappa leaves and he gets cut. It's not free agency. He gets released and he goes to the Raiders. But some of the late play from Kappa, especially last season, was a problem for this team. I think they have consigned themselves to deal with just not having the best interior pass protection, and they kind of know how to wiggle around that. I'm very interested to see this second year of Dan Pitcher. You saw some of the 12 personnel stuff with the tight end last year. You saw them start to involve the back in the passing game more than they have previously. I'm very excited to see year two of this, specifically having successfully kept T. Higgins in the building. They're Jamar and T are actually going to practice this year. Like, there's a lot of worlds where the Bengals' slow September starts doesn't happen this year, and the Bengals are just out of the gate putting 35 up on everybody right away. It's a very scary group.
One more thing for the Bengals that made me have them fourth in a positive way. Gave up a lot of fumbles last year, 29th league-wide in fumbles lost. That tends to not be a sticky stat, so it's something you look at as something where the luck is likely to turn, and that could help the offense. All right, we're at 5, halfway through this. After this, I have the Detroit Lions here.
I have the Lions here too. I'm very upset that this is going as chalky because I feel like it's not chalky. I feel like it's very hard to place the Lions.
We haven't talked about our picks at all. This is funny. Okay, so Lions fans, if you're at home, you're like 5. The fact that you lost one of the 3 best offensive coordinators in football and one of the best centers in the league, and you only dropped from 3 to 5 is a testament to the talent elsewhere on this team. I know I'm starting from like a defensive crouch here, but like 5 is still really good for any team losing those
best in the NFC, right? The first 4 from here all AFC. Like this is still, I think it's up there.
We talked about like Munkin and Brady and obviously Andy Reid and then the Bengals. There's continuity.
Pitcher,
You were the first team who was losing an offensive coordinator who is this high. So it's a really big deal. It is concerning because otherwise this is a wagon, like an unbelievable football. I mean, they were top 3 in every meaningful stat. I should stop saying meaningful. And they have like this very unique identity. Obviously, they're the most under center, play action heavy team in football. They run in a variety of ways. They put big bodies on the field. They mix things up. They'll kill you in man coverage. It's a perfect scheme for Jared Goff's skill set. You really can't, outside of the interior of the offensive line and the play caller, which we should talk about. I have no issues with. Like, they should be as good as ever been.
They averaged last year 3.02 points per drive in the regular season. They are only the 4th offense since 2000 with at least 3 points per drive. It's the 2007 Patriots, might have heard of them, pretty good. 2018 Chiefs and 2022 Chiefs. So two of the early Mahomes years, the 07 Patriots, and then these last lines averaging over 3 points per drive last season. That is a testament to aggressiveness on 4th down. That is a testament to 3rd down design and red zone design. They are excellent in the red zone. The David Montgomery aspect of that, the ability to run the football in those short yardage situations, the Amon-Ra St. Brown separation, but then also the strength of that interior offensive line, in which now Frank Ragnow is retiring, in which a right guard Kevin Zeitler left in free agency, and also a lot of the design stuff, right? You think about where some of those whirligig plays come in the low red zone, the high red zone from Ben Johnson. You're losing some of that. And so it is impossible to not discount a team losing 2 starting interior players of the quality that Ragnow and Zeitler were, especially with, you're expecting right now, rookie second rounder Tate Ratledge is right now the leader in the clubhouse to take the center job. He did not snap in college. He was a guard starter in college. And you're thinking potentially 2024 6th rounder Christian Mahogany taking right guard. It's not like
he looked great when he played last year, but next to
right. It's just it's not like
it's different.
You've plugged and chugged with veterans. It's you're a little bit cap wise, you have to start making some of these decisions, and the Lions are here kind of trying to get a little bit cheaper along the offensive line. And you got to remember, offensive line, we always talk about, is a weak link system, right? You have a great tackle duo in Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell. And when your interior offensive line is good, it really maximizes that duo. But if I know I can beat you over the center of the right guard, the value of your tackles diminishes just because, okay, they're doing great in pass protection, but I'm still getting pressure because I'm on your rookie center, right? And then the last thing to consider here, you get Ben Johnson, and Morton's been on the staff before. He's worked with Jared Goff. He knows, kind of where the bread is buttered, whatever. I have been so impressed by Jared Goff. I have been just blown away by the Jared Goff career resurgence in Detroit. I think it's been one of the coolest storylines of the last few years. But I would be lying to you if there wasn't a little voice in the back of my head that said this guy was bad before Sean McVay, and then Sean McVay made him very good, the league caught up and play fell off a cliff. Then he got to Detroit. He got Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson made him look really good, and now he's losing Ben Johnson. Like that again, he's not the guy he was in 2018, 2019, 2020. He is remarkably better. He has improved in so many ways. I also saw the Commanders game. Like, I know there's still a little piece of Jared Goff that I'll forever be suspicious of and doubt because of what his career arc has been. And so now him getting a coordinator like Morton, who is just not a
Hmm.
rarefied air sort of a dude, I would be lying to you if I said there wasn't a little worry in my chest as to what version of Jared Goff we're about to get in 2025.
We don't really know anything about John Morton, right? I mean, he was an offensive assistant with the Lions 3 years ago or 2022,
Yeah, it
so
was
he has
22.
connection there, and then since then, he was been with the Broncos, he's a Sean Payton guy.
Yeah. He's
He
a
was
little bit
offensive.
of a cult hero because he was the OC for the 2017 Jets, which
Oh
I'm
god.
pretty sure was like a McCown year, and they were like kind of doing some cool like play action stuff. They're like the deep cut nerds kind of love a John Morton, but it's very much like you haven't heard of this band yet thing.
Yeah, so we're not gonna like I'm not gonna just see it, right? There's just
Mhm.
uncertainty there. I think that Lions like have this reputation deservedly as being a team that just punches you in the mouth and they'll get downhill and they're physical and they've got it's an identity that goes to their wide receiver one is like maybe the most what is I've seen him compared to a Volkswagen Beetle on the Racing like they're just um they're like kind of old school in reputation, but make no mistakes, this is one of the most schemed up offenses in football.
Yep.
Um, the it's not just the trick plays. Like the run game is so complicated. That's like this is they do so many different things. There's so many the way they use motion to displace second level defenders was so creative and so effective. So it's just I don't think you can overstate like the potential impact this could have. But again, we talk about the ingredients. These pass catchers rock.
Mhm.
I love that they kept Tim Patrick, by the way, as their wide receiver three. I think he's such a great player for this offense. Tight ends, Laporta, I mean,
Yeah,
ASB,
healthy
games of
Laporta season
brilliance.
because Laporta was just you
Right,
could tell
yeah.
like less than 100% last
Wh-
year would be very nice. I
One of
do
my
think, yeah, talking about that offensive line scheme and your question marks there. They kept Hank Fraley, who's the offensive line coach, running
yeah,
game coordinator,
big.
and Hank Fraley and Tanner Engstrand, who was the passing game coordinator last year. Both those guys were taking OC interviews, and Hank was the one they got to keep in the building. And I think that was the priority. And now they have the two young starters in the offensive line. If you tell me, all right, Ben, the Lions led the league in e-paper play last year, and guess what? They do it again in 2025. What happened? Why? I think the first answer out of my mouth would be that Fraley gets the young offensive lineman right quick and they don't lose a step in the running game. And that, to me, that's the first fulcrum that the Lions retaining offensive dominance kind of tilts on is Fraley's job with those young guys and keeping that running game. Like he said, it's a very diverse running game. There's a lot of adjustments in that running game. It's a very well coached group, and Fraley stays. It's a big deal.
That's a good point. One of my favorite stats about the Lions last year that I think bodes well for them moving forward. They had the lowest distance to go on third down in the NFL. And this is a team that uses all four downs and is willing to actually run the ball on third down, even if it's like third and six,
Mhm.
knowing that they're going to go for it on fourth down. It's funny we talk about changing the math spatially with your run game. They also change the math in terms of the way they force defenses to play them because of their tendencies, because of that ability to run the ball so well on early downs. I still think they're going to be good. We knocked them down. If they had kept it's interesting thought experiment. If they kept Ben Johnson, I probably would have had them third still.
I might have even had him higher. Like I just
Yeah,
I
over
think
the Bills.
I know it's hackneyed now to be like, wow, Ben Johnson, because we started talking about him in 2022. But
Yeah,
it's easy to forget, like, dude, wow, Ben Johnson. Like,
yeah.
even going back and watching, it's such a good offense from a chalkboard perspective. And even if you nailed the OC hire afterward, you're probably gonna get some fall off from that.
Let's take a quick break. Come back. I have one other NFC North team on my list. Will they be next? Listen and see. All right, Ben. Who is your sixth overall pick? Because we had the
Yeah.
exact same top five, only switching the Chiefs and Bengals in different order.
Yeah.
Very
So
boring so
six
far.
is where I started to struggle, where I was like, all
Yeah.
right, I can get like 9 different teams here. I have the Eagles here. I
Okay.
think that this is like, it's a little bit of a deviation from the way that I ranked some of the other teams. Because if you go and you look back last year, as you brought up, Eagles not top 10 in DVOA. They were 16th in success rate. Now they're sixth in EPA per play. They're seventh in points per drive. It's still like a good offense overall, but it's not like, oh, statistical dominance. There are some teams I have lower that were better last year by most offensive metrics and still retained a lot of their pieces, right? The thing about the Eagles is that while they are not as well balanced and well-rounded, right? Like the success rate is kind of low. You don't super trust them relative to some other teams in clear third and longs and when they're trailing and so on and so forth. The formula is just really, 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 really hard to stop. And that's what last season came down to for them on offense. It was okay. Like, everybody knows our quarterback might take some bad sacks. Everybody knows we're not great on 3rd and 8, but we're just so doggone good at running the football that we can minimize the impact of that for our team. They were second EPA per design rush last season, only to Baltimore. They missed out on it by a thin margin. Their only major departure from a player perspective is Mekhi Becton, who played guard for them, was a big road grading guard. But remember, when they went and they signed Mekhi Becton, he was going to be like a swing tackle for them, and they kind of made him work there at guard. They have Tyler Steen, who's a 3rd-round pick in 23, who they expect to kind of step in and take over that job. Obviously, the offensive coordinator changed. Kellen Moore, 1 year in the building. Now he's gone to be the head coach of the Saints. Kevin Petula, who's an internal promotion, steps in. And there's some question mark uncertainty because we've seen, like, when Shane Steichen left, promote Brian Johnson. And then, like, everything fell apart. The offensive coordinator uncertainty can really, like, hamper this offense. We've seen that happen historically. But the last time it happened, there was no Saquon. There was no just press the big red button, and just that ability to control pace, control down and distance. Obviously, the tush push stays. It feels like a really hard offense to mess up from an X's and O's perspective. They don't run a lot of concepts. They're not very versatile in their formations. They don't use a lot of motion. Like, this is not one that's schemed up. It's just our 11 are better than your 11, and we're going to hammer that home and home and home. And so I think the Eagles still deserve to be mentioned in this group. They have their warts. We're starting to get to the warts section. But what they do well in terms of the 4th down conversions, the running game involving Hurts, handing off to Barkley, they just do so well.
So I had the Eagles 7th. I have a different team at 6. So again, not that far off. I dinged them for the coaching change. That was kind of ultimately the deciding factor versus my 6th team. You already kind of 8-miled me a little bit defending some of the hire and how it's not going to be Brian Johnson 2.0 and whatnot. But I think where I get concerned about the coaching change is not like, Kellen Moore gave Jalen Hurts answers versus the blitz. He went from being like a below average quarterback versus the blitz to having like first in QBR against the blitz in the entire NFL, right? Mm-hmm. I think, like you said, having Saquon there helps solve a lot. I think my issue, though, is like with, the reason why. So let's back this up a little bit. The reason why the Eagles didn't finish super high over the course of the season and then they finished really, really strong is they peaked at the right time. They were all healthy at the right time. The quarterback played the best football at the very end of the season as well. Where I worry about the coaching changes, well, what happens if you take out an A.J. Brown like we saw last year, mm-hmm. or Elaine Johnson is injured? Like, okay, do you have a coordinator who can coach around that? Because like you said, so much of this offense is just based on being more talented at every position. Right. I realize that sounds like nitpicking, but it's football. It's going to happen. Somebody's going to go out. So when that person, if one of the important players gets lost this year, that's where I start to worry a little bit. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I think just top to bottom, the continuity, the talent, the numbers, the way they do the thing that we talked about at the beginning, where they change the way, defenses have to respect the run so much it opens up the pass. This is certainly a theme with a lot of these offenses. It's really hard to pick nits. So I kind of was surprised when I look back and I was like, wow, this offense wasn't as good over the course of the regular season as they felt to me by the end, Ben, mm-hmm. which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct with peaked at the right time. They had the early season injuries. They had the early season bye. They were buying week 5, and then they came out of that really strong. Hurts only attempted 54 passes last year, trailing in the second half. It's the 10th fewest for any quarterback with at least 300 attempts since 2010. Like, they just didn't need to do it. Of those 54 attempts, 45 came in the first 4 weeks. And then after week 5, he attempted 9 passes trailing in the second half. They just didn't get to positions from a health perspective, right? They lost Dallas Goedert there in the middle of the season, but other than that, like not a lot of injuries. They didn't get that from a health perspective or from an opponent perspective, where we consistently saw what this offense looked like when pressed. They just had such wonderful, delightful command over game state and game script, which they deserve credit for. It's a sign of a good offense. The nit that I would throw in there to pick, right? The concern that I would have would be that Saquon Barkley had like 420 touches over the course of the regular season and in the playoffs. It was 480, I want to say, over the course of the regular season and the postseason. They used him so much. And when you go and you look at backs who had at least 400 touch seasons, again, including postseason, because we're talking about the way usage accumulates on a guy. Tim McManus just wrote about this for ESPN about Barkley. But backs with at least 400 touches, the next season tends to see a decline in efficiency and also a decline in availability, right? Christian McCaffrey, our most recent example, from 2019 into 2020. He played 16 games, then he only played 3 coming out of that. He almost had 400 touches 23 into 24. We know he missed time that season as well with usage injuries. 2017, Le'Veon Bell fell off. 2014, DeMarco Murray fell off. 2009, Chris Johnson, 5.6 yards per rush to 4.3 yards per rush. When you have a player used this heavily, his next season, he just starts at less than 100%. And so I talked a lot about how that big red Saquon Barkley button just really simplifies this offense. They go through a lot less decision-making and scheming stuff around because like that running game is so good. Well, if Saquon comes out this season just is in and out of the tub because he's dealing with usage injuries, just is not as fast as he was the past season, then right, you start to see that strain you were talking about. How much can the coordinator coach around this? How much creativity can we find?
Yeah, there's such a great illustration of this concept of like just forcing defenses into impossible choices. This was an offense that was much better against man coverage than zone coverage last year. Quarterback who's much better, right? Jalen Hurts' best ball is the go ball down the sideline. Again, when he gets the one-on-ones. But so you're like, well, why would teams not just play more zone? Well, they can't because they ran the ball into too high at the highest rate in the NFL last year and light boxes. So they faced the second most single high coverage. Like it's just they are the ultimate. The Ravens are as well. You're damned if you do. You're damned if you don't. Offense, and that doesn't change unless you take out a piece. So I might be like picking this to say like, oh, what happens if they lose a guy? But I think the other thing I'll add is like they're not that deep at a lot of these positions, which they're very, very talented. You have AJ Dillon, Will Shipley behind Saquon, right? Tight end group is not deep. Behind the third wide receiver is always a question mark on this team. Again, that is truly picking this, but I would argue that depth matters more for this team because the premise of the offense is talent, not skill.
Yeah. That's very well said.
Yeah.
I definitely like if you compare the Eagles to the Ravens and the Bills, so we had 1 and 2, and you say all 3 teams lose their wide receiver 1, there is no question that the loss of AJ Brown dramatically impacts the Eagles more than the loss of Khalil Shakir or Zay Flowers does, just because of the way those teams are constructed. And we don't know who's going to get hurt, but it does make the Eagles build more frail. It absolutely does.
All right, so the team that I had 6 is a team that lost to the Eagles in the playoffs. They're rivals in tush push. Their week 1 matchup, I have the Green Bay Packers here.
Packers are 8 for me.
Okay. Interesting. There's a lot that went into this for me. When we did the quarterback draft, I explained why I just can't quit Jordan Love. I just can't quit him. He has his flaws, and I'd say the number one of which is just making bad decisions under pressure and throwing goofy interceptions. Still finished 4th in DVOA last year, by the way. Talk about. I think that this offense is. We were talking about like the frailty. I don't think this offense is frail. I think it is very schemed up. They have a very good play caller who is going to be their head coach, so they have that as an advantage. There's continuity there, and I think it's a group of pass catchers that I believe is going to be better this year. I think I've talked about the addition of Matthew Golden and what he does for this offense. Matthew Golden doesn't have to be a world beater for this offense to benefit from adding a wide receiver with his skill set. I really believe that. I think there's also just like really slept on pieces. I mean, we know Josh Jacobs was excellent last season and the run game was quite good, when you start digging into numbers, you're like, oh, this is a lot. Third, by the way, in rush DVOA. Oh my god. But like then you suddenly look at the tight end group, and you're like, wow, this. Can we? Okay, actually, you know what? Let's take a pause moment. I love Tucker Craft.
Yeah, love Tucker
Tucker
Craft.
Craft. Okay, so just look at this Packers group again. There's no one on here who is top 10 at their position. Kraft is an interesting one. But
I would say like by the end of
yeah,
this upcoming year, like high more usage, whatever. But no, I literally the first thing on my notes is good, not elite everywhere. They're the only team
yeah,
I have on my top 10 who is above average in every single category: quarterback, play caller, running back, offensive line, wide
that's
receiver, and tight end. It's just everything is just
that's
good.
so well put. There's a lot of good, and if you have a lot of good, your floor is high enough to where if one of these guys breaks out, you can be great. I think
Mhm.
Matthew Golden has that ability. I think Jordan Love has that ability. The run game already, but Kraft is such a throwback, and he's first of all, he actually was second yards per route run behind only George Kittle, which is funny because he has like this extremely low average depth of target, but he was just such a human monster truck after the catch that he ended up being extremely productive for them. And he's still, this is year 3, right? So like, healthy Musgraves would help, but I like this group of pass catchers. I really do. I think they're good. And it doesn't actually bother me that they don't have anyone who is truly elite.
So I wanted to ask you about that because you said right. You said I think that Golden could be really good for this team even if he isn't like a elite wide receiver one. I definitely subscribe to the normie take, which is like I really wish this team had like a clear big wide receiver one. I'm very big on like postseason football. I want guys who the other team cannot deal with. I want like legit scale tipping, field tipping players. So why for you is Golden like all right? Golden's just like the field stretching type. Why does that still work for you with this group?
Because its offense was already efficient last year, the year before last year, in the second half of the season, they were like top 3 offense in the NFL, right?
Mhm.
But and honestly, if you take out Love, it's the interceptions and drops is why they weren't good, which are
Mhm.
things that he can get better at.
Yeah,
The
and could just
turnover
regress.
drops,
Period. Right? They could just statistically get to a
especially
better spot.
he his first year was much better at that. I think avoiding some of those interceptions under pressure. So you already have proof case study for this offense being a top 5 offense. You have a quarterback who loves to throw deep and an offensive play girl who would dial it up for him. At times, Christian Watson has been that for him. But if Matthew Golden can be the big play guy he was in college in this offense, who's more explosive? Let's go. I mean, the Bengals. Look at this list. We're talking about the Ravens, not the Bills and the Chiefs.
Yeah, no, they were third in explosive pass rate last year. The Packers were right. Like their ability to rip off the chunks is very very serious, and it's a big part of that is having a primary. Okay, our primary deep guy is Christian Watson. Safeties know where does 9 light up. Oh, there's speed at 3. Be worried about it. But then Jaden Reed can make the big catch 20 yards down the field, and he can turn the 5-yard shallow into a big run. And then low Tucker Craft on the tight end delay is going to break 2 tackles. Like the fact that they have guys on guys is part of what allows them
Everybody
to be so
fits
explosive.
together.
Yeah.
Everybody fits together. And by the way, again, this run game was 3rd in DVOA last year.
Mhm.
A little bit of concern maybe with the offensive line. Once again, they're reshuffling a bit, and I don't know what's going on with Elton Jenkins. But if you tell me you have a quarterback who has threw some interceptions last year, but at his peaks can play, I really believe, at a top 5 level. You have a run game that's top 5 in the league, and you have an explosive passing attack. Why can't this be a top 5 offense?
Yeah. So I'll give you one more reason for excitement, and then I'll give you my 2 reasons for
Okay.
concern. The other thing that stood out to me about the Packers is you brought up the Lions and that third down, how close they were right to the sticks. The Packers were pretty below average on third down last year relative to the distance that they faced. They were 6th in the league in yards to go on third down. They were quite close to the sticks, only 15th in conversion rate. And so if you just as a team have let that regress. You continue to rely on that excellent running game. I thought they were so good. Jacobs last year was excellent. The design of the running game was great, right? They had the Malik Willis games as well, which kind of adds to some of that running game numbers, but still shows you how versatile they can be. If you get close to the sticks and you're just a little bit better on third down, and some of that is Love not shooting, but taking the intermediate throw instead of the deep throw, taking the check down, letting a guy go get a first down for him, then you can just get a better downside conversion rate. You can stay in the field a little bit longer. the other side of that coin, the reason why I always have a little bit of hesitation with the Packers is because they're very reliant on explosives, right? They were third in explosive pass rate, 15th in dropback success rate. And so we're creating a big chunks. We are paying a cost for it
Right.
in terms of our snap to snap ability. They were fourth in explosive run rate, and then 10th in rush success rate. It was objectively a good running game, but they have the clear mantra for this offense, the dogma is explosives, right? We are big long play action dropbacks. We are going to hit big plays. And Love, I'm with you on the potential. I always find myself a little bit below the consensus, football nerd excitement for Jordan Love because there are just layup plays that because he doesn't
Well,
want to nail his feet to the ground, because he doesn't want to take the humble gain that he leaves on the field. That does like some of these. The Packers always have like 3 or 4
oh,
games a year where the offense just kind of like just comes out and lays an egg because they're chasing these explosives and they don't get into rhythms at all in the passing game.
outside of Jared Goff, Jordan Love is the only quarterback, this is spoiling a little bit, on my list in terms of my top 10 offenses who doesn't consistently scramble.
Yeah.
Every other team has a quarterback who is willing
Oh, that's
to
interesting.
take those. Yeah, you're trying to project ahead.
No, I have a team that definitely does not have a scrambling quarterback.
Okay, maybe I don't think I'm missing anyone. You didn't have the Dolphins in your top 10.
No,
Anyway,
please.
okay. So, anyways, this cuts to what you're saying. With Jordan Love, I have really two frustrations. One of which is bad decision making, trying to do too much, not taking some of the easy gains, and I think that contributes to the success rate issue. You're talking about just the efficiency of the offense, the explosive hunting. The other is like his unwillingness to scramble makes it significantly easier for defenses to approach them. I don't have in front of me, but they faced, they probably more cover 2 man, I would guess, in a fair amount of these teams on this list.
Yeah.
If he is just willing to scramble for just Jordan, they're in 5, man. Just give me those 6 yards. I really believe that solves a lot of their issues, combined with you stretch the field because they've got guys who can work underneath in the passing game. Again, by the way, Tucker Kraft, first league wide in yards after catch per reception amongst tight ends. The dude was a Tonka trunk.
And you said he was second only to George Kittle in yards per route run, and that's because like the Niners get George Kittle down the field. You can't tell me when Kraft makes a catch at the line of scrimmage, he doesn't look like Kittle. He absolutely 100% in terms of like the prime Kittle truck stuff. It's very similar.
And then even the way after the play is over, he acts like
yes, he's just like a deeply insane man. Yes,
I love watching him play. All the pieces are there. That's just what I'm saying with the Packers. I really think they've got the pieces in place. Just a few little tweaks. Jordan Love.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
If Love grows up, it's rocket ships, but there's some growing to do.
Okay. Who did you have? So I had the Packers and then the Eagles. You said you had the Packers at 8, which means you have a different team at 7.
Yep. Eagles were 6 for me. Packers were 8 for me. I had the Buccaneers at 7. Which I don't know if that surprised you because we were talking beforehand. You're like, oh, did the Buccaneers sneak into your top 10? I had to be like, ooh, like they very much cleared my top 10.
I have the Bucs at 10. So spoiler alert. So they are in my top 10. And I watched a lot of they're probably actually the team I ended up watching the most while doing prep for this. I don't know why. I just felt like I needed to revisit stuff because the numbers are so insane for them. And I feel like slept on how good they were last year. So I wanted to go back and watch. Okay, what was it? Like, what am I forgetting?
Numbers for you. They were top 5 in all of success rate, EPA per play, points per drive, and downside conversion rate, one of 3 offenses to be top 5 in all of those metrics. They were the best offense in the league in terms of third down conversion rate, converted on 50.4% of their third down conversions, despite having the 16th yards to go on third down, right? Now, you might say, Ben, that screams regression to the mean. That screams that's going to come back down. But a fun nugget for you, new offensive coordinator Josh Grizzard, who's stepping into Liam Cohen's shoes, who's departed, was the third down guy last year. He designed the third down offense. It was the best third down offense in football. You go and you watch some of their designer stuff, their third down and their red zone situational football. I mean, they are with gas cooking. It is a very cool offense from the motions perspectives and the way they're getting multiple routes available down the field. They're simplifying reads for Baker, the late check down stuff, some of the tight end release and the running backs of Rashad White or Bucky Irving. Like, they had a lot of pitches in their bag in terms of getting, that gotta have it play in the high red zone or on third down. And I think when a team is really good situationally, that is indicative to me of a good offensive staff. That's where a lot of the pass game coordinators and the quality control guys get involved. And so Liam Cohen departs, Grizzard steps in. Grizzard's kind of this unknown guy. He's 34. He's never called plays before. There's a wide range of outcomes, but reading the tea leaves, I'm willing to have some faith in a guy who spent like 3 years under Mike McDaniel and then helped the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield have one of his best passing games of his career. Besides Cohen, there are no departures. They are returning, Mina, all 11 starters on offense from a team that was top 5 in every single offensive metric that we have. They drafted Emeka Egbuka in the first round to just be the 12th new guy. Like, it is, it's so hard to not design an offense well for these weapons. It's just so, it's so simple. Okay. The line is so good. I'm all in on the Bucs.
Start with the positives before I get to why I ended up. They're still in my top 10. So you have them 7. I have them 10. So obviously saw a lot of the same numbers as you. I went back and watched the run game for a while. Because it's funny. They don't, the offensive line doesn't come up super high and like run block. They're high, but they're not like, they don't come up as dominant. They're dominant. They were destroying teams, and I loved watching once they pivoted to more of a gap scheme game to accommodate Bucky Irving. It's like teach tape, like some of the just a joy to watch them run duo. Bucky Irving on the gap stuff, like the counter runs too. Like he has such. I might post some clips because I just ended up saving so many of them. His vision is so exceptional on those runs. And then his ability to make guys miss in a phone booth. It's such a beautiful
37% missed tackle rate, Bucky Irving. Oh.
It's such a beautiful combination of offensive line and back. Like you love it when the back, the scheme, the line, it's all working together. I hit Nate about this. Graham Barton. Oh my God.
Yep,
what a home run of a draft pick. That dude freaking rocks. But the whole offensive line was good. Even there's a game where like Worse was out, I was watching. They were just so that's all gonna stay the same. Like you said, it's the same. And it's such a great ecosystem for Baker Mayfield, who we've seen over his career when he is kept clean. He's an accurate quarterback. He is a scrambler. I hope you were including him in the scramblers when we were talking about that. Yes. I thought, he was throwing the ball at the fastest rate he ever has last season. The only thing that really, where they don't come up well and that hurt them was he threw interceptions. And I think like if I had hesitation, it's for the same reason that you talked about with the Lions, which is I've seen this quarterback before with different coaches. Yeah, Liam Cohen was so good. Like that was, I know you're saying Grizzard was responsible for third down, but like Liam Cohen was so good at not just getting Baker to play well, but I thought game plan specific, evolving the offense. Guys were in, they didn't have Chris Godwin for freaking the entire half of the season. And so I'm just like, okay, you're bringing in it's a different offense coordinator. I know he's in the building. This is a quarterback who until last year, was pretty inconsistent over the course of his career. I have to ding them for that combination of like sort of shaky quarterback and not he's good, but I'm just saying. And then the loss of the coordinator. So that was it for me. But like I could have total egg on my face because if you're betting on teams based on offensive line, they absolutely belong in the top 7. This offensive line is great. They're young. They're well coached. And they kept their coach. So, who, buddy? By the way, Josh Grizzard, pulled up his Wikipedia, is a Yale grad. But also...
Bulldogs?
Yeah, Bulldogs.
Yeah, there we go.
More funnily, his name is from a town... He's from a town called Lizard Lick. So his name was Josh Grizzard, and he's from Lizard Lick, which is very weird. We'll see, man. This is... I should have drafted him on head coaches because he is being given the keys to the kingdom here with this offense.
Yeah, I think if you made me list like first time coaches, coordinators, like who have like the world in their hands, right? Like everything is in their ability. It's either him or Nick Caley, the Texans OC. But like if Grizzard is what he sounds like he's billed as, like everybody thinks like this is the next dude, like this is a highly impressive guy, then yeah, like the Buccaneers offense should. It feels too far to say pick up where they left off, but we bring up I've seen Baker Mayfield with other coordinators. I've seen Jared Goff with other coordinators. I've seen a few Liam Cohen offenses in my day. I saw Liam Cohen in Kentucky. I saw Liam Cohen the year that he was coaching for the Rams. I tell you, I Liam Cohen, his 1 year was a
Yeah,
very good
yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah,
How
yeah,
much of that
fair.
is him, and how much of that is
No,
the
no,
pieces that are
totally
around him?
fair, totally
Yeah,
fair. The players are the ones who make it go, and they have really good players. The
yeah.
receiving group is incredible, and they doubled down, perhaps unnecessarily, adding
No,
another
it could be sick.
stud
Yeah.
receiver. I
A
don't
lot of
even
this is
know.
just like what
Yeah.
regresses, right? Mayfield had 13
Yeah.
fumbles, only lost 2 of them, right? Okay, so maybe that's gonna go. But they had 25 drops last year. So what if some of those get caught? Like there's Mayfield's really high in a lot of like
I feel
big
it.
time throw stat, turnover worthy play stat, third down conversion. It's like okay, something's gonna stick, something's gonna fall, and there's some variance there. But I
Can you
trust
go
the ancillary cast so much.
can we go back to Bucky Irving for a second? I
Good ball
forgot
player.
the stat. Um, okay, so the success rate, which we talked about, is we use a lot with running, so how efficient your run game. Like a very good run game success rate is like high 40s. Like that's good, right?
Mhm.
A good, when the Bucks had two backs on the field, Irving and White, they had a 60% success rate, which is
Yeah,
first in the NFL.
they did cool
The
stuff with
screens, the screen
yep.
that oh my god, the
Back
screens.
motion out of the backfield, and they would relocate a linebacker. They have and one of the other cool things is that like when they lost Godwin, they lost the let's plug the wide receiver into the run fit blocking dude. And with Godwin back, you can just be a lot more versatile. As assuming Godwin comes back healthy, what have you. But if Godwin's not back, that's something Igbuka did really well at Ohio State. Excellent blocker. I think again, like screen game was a huge part of the success for this team. I think you could see that fall off with the departure of Cohen. But the pieces are there where again, if Grizzard is
Yeah,
just
your
knows what
players are
he's doing, you should be there.
Ibuka on screens, come on. Okay, so that's your 1 through 8.
Mhm.
We've got 8. So I've got, 8, 9, 10 left, but we know my 10. My number 8, San Francisco 49ers.
I have the 49ers at 11. They were my first out.
Okay, so good. Finally, we got some
Yeah.
variance here. Um, Part of this is because even though the Niners, I don't even know what to compare them to. It was like, you haven't seen the movie Novocaine.
I haven't even heard of the movie Novocaine, man. Like I got nothing for you.
What they went through last year, the amount of players they lost was just like it got to the point where it was like this is a bit, right? Like somebody's doing a bit. Like this is I can't imagine what it was like to be a Niners fan. And yet, despite they were the most injured team in football. Despite that, still finished top 10 in DVOA, 12th in EPA, 12th in success rate. Tons of explosives, hilariously, right? They were third in percentage of plays that went over 10 yards. They lost a lot of plays and second in yards per play. So I guess we have to start there. I feel like last year was the hell year. And you come back from that, even in your hell year, you didn't fall outside the top 12. You retain Kyle Shanahan, of course. You get Trent Williams back. You get Brandon Ayuk back. I thought Ricky Pearsall quietly showed some stuff in his limited outing, his outing towards the end of the season. Obviously, he missed the beginning of the year because he was shot. Who knows how much you're going to get from, I know it's a crazy thing to say,
He
Christian
also had a hamstring
McCaffrey.
injury, but it's a way funnier bar if you just land on because he got shot.
Horrible. I'm sorry. They actually have decent depth too. They Demarcus Robinson, Jacob Cowing, Juwan Jennings is still there, but it's Kyle Shanahan. Like, how am you're betting on Kyle Shanahan not calling a top 10 offense in the NFL, Ben?
I want to say 2 times in the last 6 years. I was going back and looking like real quick at his previous numbers at 49ers. It feels bad. I don't like how it feels, especially with the team that I have at 9, honestly. But that was the team that ended up scaring me the most here relative to the coordinator stuff. But there's so much uncertainty. It's just so hard to have faith in McCaffrey back healthy, Brandon Ayuk returning back healthy from a pretty traumatic knee injury, enough games of Trent Williams, enough games of George Kittle, enough high caliber play from Brock Purdy, and then also the rest of this offensive line. Like there's one certainty, and it is that Kyle Shanahan is good. And then at every other position, I have reasons for moderate to severe doubt.
Every other position?
Yes.
Can I give you some George Kittle stats?
When he played.
Let me give you some George Kittle stats. George Kittle, amongst all pass catchers last year, was first in yards per target. Over a quarter of his catches went for 20 or more yards, by the way. Where do you think the next tight end ranked? Yards per target.
He was first in yards per target. Who is next? Man,
the
it's
next
gonna be like,
tight end.
It's gonna be like Jonnu Smith at like 40 or something.
No, it's Brock Bowers at 31st. So between George Kittle and the next tight end, there were 30 wide receivers in yards per target. He was fourth league wide in yards per route run. The only other tight end above 20 was Trey McBride. George Kittle is still so good.
And he's been healthy the last few years. In terms of like games played, if you go and you look at injury report stuff, like he is just constantly dealing with nagging things and gutting through it. As he gets a little bit older, as Trent Williams gets older, we obviously saw McCaffrey last year. Like, there's no doubt in my mind Kittle's that dude. And I think between Ayuk into Pearsall into third and Juwan Jennings, my dear son, whom I love so very much, like they added to Marcus Robinson, I think they will have enough pass catchers in enough games that we won't be in week 10 being like, well, the lack of receivers is prohibitive for the 49ers offensive success. Like, I think they have enough depth and those guys will be healthy. I'm not sure that we have, like, if you go and you look back at just the wide receiver rooms that we've talked about, there's so much talent at this position. I can't put this room up against the Packers. I can't put this room up against the Buccaneers. I can't put this room up against the Eagles. I can't put this room up against the Lions, because even if Ayuk is that star, that like top 15 player, that I still have depth questions in terms of how dangerous those number 2, number 3 can be.
Yeah, Kittle's the one. Ayuk's two. But Ayuk, I think that's the other thing, is where our last memory of him is he was bad last year, quite frankly. The weird off season. If you get a motivated Ayuk, I think that probably is the thing on which this whole thing hinges for me, is whether or not Ayuk looks like branded Ayuk again. Because when he looks like Ayuk, he has a really good pairing with Brock Purdy, who is willing to throw him the ball deep. He's there for him on extended plays. I know that everybody's got mixed feelings about Brock Purdy. The Brock Purdy discourse is never ending. I, as a Niners fan, would feel better about him after last season than I did after the prior season, because that was the hell season for your boy. And he made it through, and he wasn't that bad. He was actually at times pretty damn good. So, if things are even a little bit better around him, you're feeling pretty good. Okay, you had them 11. So,
can I give one more thing that you said this hinges on Ayuk? Well, I don't want to brush past this, because there's a big part of the reason why I had them at 11, which was hard for me. I want Niners fans to know, like, I had them on the list, I took them off, I had them on, I took them off. Dude, like Ben Barch at left guard, Jake Brendel at center.
If Trent Williams misses any time.
Yeah, like they have a great player there in Pooney, great young player. Trent's obviously the man. Left guard can be like prohibitively bad. It can be like below league average. It can be a Achilles heel to this team. Brendel has good reps in run blocking. I understand why they want to keep him. He's an important player for them in their running game. In pass protection, Brendel continues to be a player that teams go after. Same thing is true with McKivitz. Like that, the Niners, even if in versions where the offense is good, are going to deal with a lot of quarterback pressure on some of these extended dropbacks. And that's that again, I can't stack this offensive lineup against some of the offensive lines that we've talked about previously. Just from a talent perspective, it's hard for me to get there.
I think that if the pass catchers are healthy, Brock Purdy's not going to have to hold on to the ball as long as he did last year. I think that was a lot of that had to do
buying
with
time. That was very impressive. The pocket management, the escapability, man. It's the thing he brings that's so new and so valuable to this offense.
He's a scrambler.
Yeah.
Who is your non-scrambling quarterback? Because you only have one team left, right? Or do you have 9?
I have 2. I have 9 and my 10 remaining.
Yeah, because I have one team left, which is 9.
Yeah.
Looking at the list,
I'll tell you,
do you have the Cowboys in the top 10?
No, I do not.
No. Jags?
No.
Chargers?
No.
Texans?
No.
You do not have the Patriots do have a scrambling quarterback.
Yeah, I'll tell you my 9.
Which reveal your 9, because it's not mine.
The 9, the most scrambling quarterback is the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels, who scrambled on 24% of his pressure dropbacks last season, which like led the league by like 8 percentage points.
Let's talk about them, because that's my 9th team as well.
Yeah.
So now we're down. You just have a different 10 teams. So I have the Commanders at 9. We both have the Commanders at 9. Okay. I wrestled with putting them higher personally. they should be higher based on how they performed last season. Let's start
Mhm.
here. This was a team that was 4th in both EPA and success rate, 6th in DVOA. Um, they were extremely good on 4th down, which we can get to, which gives me some cause for concern because they're not going to convert 87% of their 4th downs again. However, they were also good on early down. So it wasn't just like a team that was like
Right.
completely dining on 4th down. Had an extremely good run game. They have a quarterback who was quite unflappable in big moments and in clutch situations. And they arguably got better this year. Offensive line, they did not. I love that they didn't rest on their laurels with their offensive line because I think they were kind of exposed at the end of last season. You add Laramie Tunsil, you draft Josh Connerly, and then they added Debo Samuel as a pass catcher. So should they be higher?
Yeah, you can get there, right? Again, right from a statistical perspective, you go and you look at success rate and EPA per play. They're like top 10 and everything. Downside conversion rate, their ability to convert on 4th downs, like you brought up, is a big part of it. They just never really had to punt. Like they were just so good at getting into scoring range. Daniels with the scrambling, like it was a incredible season. It was also a little bit miraculous of a season. When you go and you look at Daniels having one of the most successful scrambling seasons of all time in history, he was third highest best scramble season by total EPA generated we've ever seen, right? And like he only had 1 touchdown on a scramble. If he had 2, it would have been the best one ever. That's probably not going to be as good in year 2 than it is in year 1. That's not because he's going to be slower. He's going to get hurt. Teams are going to catch up. It's just because statistically it's hard to retain
Yeah.
that. The 84% 4th down conversion rate. I mean, it's the best 4th down season by EPA generated by a
Ever, yeah.
mile. It is not close. Like that is going to come back down to earth a little bit. Not because they're going to be worse designed or because defense will catch up, but because that's just the nature of a 17-game season in the NFL where one ball bounces the wrong way and all of a sudden you lose a game. And so I do think that there are some like clear signs of, okay, this is going to regress a little bit. I appreciate the intentions behind the additions, but let's forget the fact that they just added Debo Samuel, just added Laramie Tunsil, and let's just look at the rosters and independent of when the players were added and, let's be aggressive. A room that is Terry McLaurin, Debo Samuel, and probably Luke McCaffrey, because De'Ami Brown is gone, Alameda Gias is gone, and Noah Brown got hurt, is not the scariest wide receiver room you ever saw. Zach Ertz at tight end, like just had that great season. But again, like this is just, it's not a pass catching group that intimidates you and forces your hand as a defense the way that some of the previous groups we've talked about have.
I'm higher on the Tunsil edition than I am on the Debo Samuel edition, and not just because of clips of him jogging in camp, which is silly.
I'm always a little bit lower on Tunsil than I feel like consensus is, just because of a lot of the pre-snap procedural problems. Yeah,
he's still good, man. He's still a good player. You better not have the Texans as your.
No, I do not.
Wait,
yeah, and I think you can explain some of Tunsil's season last year, both from procedural issues and in-play pass protection issues, as being a little bit mentally checked out. I think that was a pretty clear problem for a lot of the Texans' offensive line. I will say, like, a big offensive line shuffle it can be good. I'm glad they addressed the line. It also can, you're still talking about a new guy at left tackle. You're talking about a rookie potential start at right tackle. Brandon Coleman, who played left tackle for them last year, is probably going to move into left guard. Sam Cosme, who's their best offensive lineman at right guard, has the ACL tear in the divisional round. He's probably going to be out for most of 2025.
Sneaky big one with Cosme, by the way. Yeah, that was a big injury. He was really good last year. I hear you, but I do think they've got good. They've got good depth there, and I thought they really outcoached them.
Yeah,
they coached them beyond my expectations last season. So I feel pretty good about this staff with more talented guys reshuffling the decks. They're all just also really helped by Jay Daniels' scrambling ability. I mean, he's not going to scramble for 600 yards again, probably. Right. Yeah. And I kind of hope he doesn't, because while I definitely last year convinced me that his durability was a lot better than I think some of us feared. You don't want your quarterback taking those hits, right? And I think he is so good as a pocket passer, and like he can win as a pure drop back passer. It certainly helped their run game. It helped the offensive line. It helped on 4th down, but I don't think it's quite necessary. You don't want him scrambling at the rate that he scrambled last year. How do we feel, before we move on, one more thing about the Cliff Kingsbury piece?
Because that's exactly
the final piece of this puzzle.
Yeah. So I talked about the offensive line reshuffling and some of the wide receiver depth and the stats that are prime for some regression. But really, when you get down to it, the reason why it was tough for me to get him higher is the Jared Goff theorem on Cliff Kingsbury. So I've watched a lot of Cliff in my day.
Yeah, I know.
And last season, let us make no bones about it, without question, the coach who most exceeded my expectations. Not like, oh, they overperformed. No, did legitimately good things that are sustainable and are real and are valuable and are him, was Cliff Kingsbury. He blew me and my expectations out of the water. Everybody had the same line 5 weeks into the season. Cliff always comes out the gate strong. He can't sustain it, and he really sustained it over the course of the year. However, I'm very big on, if you got to show me this over multiple years, right? You got to be able to prove to me over time that you can do this. And I cannot get 100% on the board of like, well, Cliff has figured out NFL offense and like there's not a second shoe dropping. I still just in my bones, in my marrow, all right, feel a concern that eventually this very college inspired, they ran a ton of screens, a lot of throws behind line of scrimmage, pony
no
personnel,
huddle.
shotgun running game is going to hit the thing that it often hits in the NFL, a wall, where it gets figured out, the tendencies get dialed in on, and defenses catch up overnight to some of this running game stuff. And so I cannot help but be worried about the Cliff Kingsbury of everything. I think if there's a team that embarrasses me this season, it's the Commanders. They're going to be a top 2 offense. I had them at 9. I'm an idiot. But I'm sorry, I just
By the way,
cannot fully get there on Cliff.
that the Commanders fan, neither of us have said rookie wall. They've got tape on Jane Daniels because I don't believe that.
That's not real.
Like
Yeah.
that, he's the dude we saw mentally, the accuracy, I think he's the total package. I have questions about the other elements of this. Okay. I figured out who your team is, and I'm going to tell you why they didn't make my top 10. It's the Los Angeles Rams.
Ding, ding, ding.
Oh, is Alaric Jackson their left tackle?
Probably.
4 days ago, 2 hours ago, I know I realized that I work for the Rams, so I could probably like ask around and get some info on this. Alaric Jackson dealing with blood clots, season in jeopardy due to health issues. Headline 14 hours ago.
I was not aware of this information at the time of the ranking. Oh, that's awful news for Alaric.
Would you like to drop them? I know it sucks. Okay, you can. I'm giving you the opportunity now to change your pick.
No, I probably want to just keep it because, like, I'm already here. Like, let's talk about the Rams. I have notes on the Rams. DJ Humphries is there.
Because this particular quarterback, it's the kind of thing where that is a big deal. As much as I love Rams preseason legend Warren McClendon, who's the other death piece there. I don't know why I didn't mention the Rams because they were in my. So the teams that I had that I was like shuffling between were the Cowboys, the Jaguars, the Texans, the Rams, the Cardinals, the Chargers, and the Dolphins. I realize that's a ton of teams, but that takes you to 60.
That's legitimately like how it has to be when you're talking about the fringe top 10 offenses. There's so many.
Do you think I'm overrating it? Like, let's say he isn't, because they gave him a contract extension. I guess my fear here is I do think at this point in his career that's a potential deal breaker for Matthew Stafford if he doesn't have protection.
No, and they just gave Alaric the big contract, and I think he'd earned that big contract. I've got my, he can lose to some elite rushers, but in general, I liked what they had done along the offensive line. They go and they get Coleman Shelton, not Shelton Coleman. They go and they get Coleman Shelton to potentially improve there at center. Havenstein's still there. They have the great guard play from Steve Avila, who's a player that they moved around last year, and he had injury, and that led with some problems. But this team last year was like near the bottom of the league at explosive rush rate. The line is a lot better than their running game would imply. And I think it's because at running back with Kyron Williams, and then they drafted Blake Corum, they just drafted for kind of these hard-nosed, go and kind of dig out some yardage players. And I think that they knew they had to improve there a little bit. They get Jarquez Hunter in the 4th round. The hope is that explosiveness number, like I say, explosive can be very, very volatile. The explosive run rate leaps. From a passing perspective, and this is like, I think it's very important to say this. I don't think a lot of people are here on this. The improvement from the 2024 version of Cooper Kupp to 2025 Devontae Adams is a dramatic improvement at wide receiver too. From a name recognition perspective, from a contract size perspective, I understand that Cooper got a deal from the Seahawks, Devontae got a deal from the Rams, whatever. If you Cooper Kupp's miles per hour last year, his success rate last year, his ability to get off the line of scrimmage from last year,
all right, we get it.
Yeah, sorry, Seattle fans, but this team, which is very the design of this offense is very predicated on we've got one guy over here and one guy over there, and we can just interchange and flip-flop and motion. You never know where we're coming at you. They very much lost that part of their menu because Kupp's athleticism just really tailed off a cliff there at the end of the season. Devontae and Puka Nacua with Matthew Stafford in a Sean McVay offense. It's just I think the passing game has top 5 potential. I really do. And obviously Alaric and left tackle issues aside, I think we're going to see about as dangerous of a Rams passing game as we've seen in the last couple of years. It's going to feel like the prime, like the rookie year Puka in terms of the danger that they have with those two individuals. I love Terrence Ferguson, the second round tight end.
I was about to say I really like tight end
Oregon, and they've been sniffing around a tight end improvement. I think you're going to see a lot of easy targets for him as well. I have a lot of faith in this passing attack.
So why weren't they better last year? I think I would put the Rams under the same rubric as like the last time we saw them. It was Matthew Stafford, World's Destroyer, right? Mm-hmm. And like the last 2 drives against the Eagles, you were like, oh my God, it's happening. And we love Matthew Stafford. We talk about how his highs are as high as any quarterback. He's the quarterback who defensive players correctly fear. And yet over the course of the season, pretty inconsistent. Did you feel it was a pressure thing or because I think that was a big part of it. And that's again, why I just keep going to this left tackle thing as being like potentially a major issue for them, but it's a big question mark.
So I was looking for my true media table and I found it successfully. Last year, Rams third down, average yards to go 6.6, 5th best in football. Conversion rate 36.8%, 24th in football. On pass 30% conversion rate, 28th in football. And a lot of that's because teams took away Puka and told somebody else to beat him. And when there's not a lot of Tyler Higbee and Cooper Kupp's in the lineup, and just they don't have the man-to-man winner. I think again, like
Nakua was out a lot of the season too. I should mention that.
They were 27th in adjusted games lost on offense. The Rams were the Niners were 30th, right, on offense specifically. So a lot like the games the Niners lost. The Rams offensive line for the first half of the season, just every single week was a different 5-man rotation, right? If you assume a more stable injury season and then the addition of Devontae helping them win man coverage on third downs, I just think they're going to be able to sustain drives way better than they did. The pressure aspect, because I remember talking about this with you last year as we were previewing games. Matthew Stafford and the huge delta between pressured and unpressured performance.
Just pulling that.
Yeah. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that you had the offensive line uncertainty, you had those changes, you had the lack of a go-getter player, right? A one-on-one winner besides Puka Nacua, such that Stafford felt like I've got to hold for as long as I possibly can. I think you're going to see the team be more willing to throw earlier in the down, get the ball out a lot quicker, a more healthy drop-back passing game than you saw last season.
Yeah, under pressure drops from QBR of 75 to 28 last year, going from top of the NFL to very well below average. I think if I felt better about that situation, we'll see. It's up in the air. I don't know. It's like, with the blood clots. I mean, with Christian Barmore, I was he missed a season, but then he came back. I thought maybe his career would be over. So it's definitely a fluid situation. And DJ Humphries is like he's played. He started in the NFL. It's not like I just worry about that a little bit. I mentioned the teams that I had in my 6. Were they the same ones as you, or was there anyone else you wanted to sneak in?
Yeah, so I didn't really give consideration to the Dolphins. I feel like we kind of know what the Dolphins are at this point in terms of when it works.
What are we calling a top 10 offense? When
it works, but also the good defenses know how to stop it and they don't have a second punch. And so once you can take the wind out of their sails right now, like, it's hard for them to find a physical running game or become like a shot play team. Like it just kind of is all or nothing, chips into the basket of this 10 to 20 yard middle of the field play action RPO style approach. So I didn't have the Dolphins in there. Like I said, Niners at 11, Niners, Commanders, and Rams I really struggled with. I had a rotation of those 3 teams as I was writing it out. And then the other team that was up there for me was the Cardinals. The Cardinals, just from a stats perspective, had like a fringe top 10 to top 10 offense last season. And yet we were all frustrated with them. We were very frustrated with the Marvin Harrison Jr. usage and the lack of getting Trey Benson involved. And there's a lot of meat on that bone for some of their young players to help elevate the team. I will say that you go and you look at pressure versus unpressured numbers again for the Cardinals. Kyler was pretty poor when unpressured and was extremely
his splits last year were crazy, by the way. They're so strange. Like the things he was good at, the things he wasn't.
The thing that kept them out of the top 10 for me was it felt like a lot of their success last year was fragile. So even though there's meat on the bone for Marvin Harrison to bring this offense forward to level and Trey Benson to bring it forward to level, there's
Yeah.
also worlds where they are just way worse from a statistical regression
But also,
perspective.
they
So
might be in a
fringe,
better
but I didn't get them there.
position because of their defense. Buda Baker said something. So he was the other person I interviewed. I have a
Mhm.
few other interviews coming out. And he said something that almost made me want to put the Cardinals to top 10, which he said that Kyler Murray is going to run more this year.
Nice.
Which I was like, ooh.
Get the RC car out, baby. Zip, 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 zip.
Come on, man. The one team that I feel like I could see, like the one team I really wanted to put in the top 10 to be spicy is the Jaguars.
Oh, that much faith? Yeah, I would have
No,
loved to, but I couldn't get there.
I really want to watch them. I think the Cowboys, if Pickens is Pickens
Mhm.
and actually, and plays all 16 and 17, and I think they could be a top 10 offense too. That was really hard for me to leave out.
I
But
wanted to get there with the Chargers, but I just kept on seeing Greg Roman's name and then stopping.
all right. So to recap, my top 10, I will read in order. Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, Lions, Packers, Eagles, Niners, Commanders, and Bucks. Ben?
Yep. Ravens, Bills, Bengals, Chiefs, Lions. The same top 5. Little switch at 3 and 4. And then I was Eagles 6, Buccaneers 7, Packers at 8, Commanders at 9. The Los Angeles Rams, Alaric Jackson assumed at 10.
It was a brutal news break for your boy.
When you asked me that, I was like, what don't I know?
We'll see. I don't know. Maybe it's not a big deal. It's something to keep an eye on. I could be totally wrong. And I still think they'll be a good offense. They were in my just outside group. So I have a little bit of news, by the way. For listeners who are in Seattle, at the end of July, on July 31st, I am doing another live podcast show at Numos, which I did one with Bill Barnwell, I think like 7 years ago, 6 years, a long time ago. So it's been a long time since we've played Seattle. There's going to be information at minapodlive.com. You can buy tickets there. You also get snacks and a water soda with the tickets, I'm told. It is July 31st at Numos in Seattle, minapodlive.com. Guests this podcast include Danny Kelly and Jackson Bevins, my buds who have been on this show. And Julian Love is going to be my special guest, who is an awesome guy who I'm really excited to interview on stage and talk a little Seahawks with during training camp. So minapodlive.com. I'll put that information on the internet as well. In the meantime, you guys can also check out my TV pod with David Dennis Jr., Viewer Discretion, where we are currently in the heart of Love Island USA season. If you want to hear people complain about Ace and Huda, go check that out. Or you should go to youtube.com/@MinaKimes, where I've been teasing all these interviews I'm doing. They are going on YouTube. I'm not putting out the audio for those. I think this week is Buda Baker, so check that out. Ben, is there anything I can direct folks to that you've written recently?
Absolutely not. No. I have my sophomore review on quarterbacks. So Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, Drake May, all those guys that just came out. I did a piece, you know how in the offseason that your editors are like, you want to do this? You're like, yeah, it sounds cool. And you realize how much work it is. I did a piece picking the best draft pick from every single draft slot in the modern draft era history. So 1 to 256. That's coming out next week. Pretty excited about that. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, but that's what we're up to these days.
Yeah, it could not pay me to do that. Any consideration for the Vikings, by the way? Because if JJ McCarthy is even above average, there's, anyways.
If you made me rank supporting casts,
I know,
offensive infrastructure around, Vikings would have been like top 5, but I could not get there with a quarterback I haven't seen play yet. I just couldn't do it.
All right. Thank you, as always, to the folks at Omaha Productions, Kirsten Sebecki, Anthony Jimenez, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Tucker Tashton. I will be back next week picking top 10 defenses with Dominique Foxman.